Welcome everyone to the second webinar in our Last Mile Analytics series. Glad to have you here. If you joined us for part one in the beginning of the month, you'll remember that we had a pretty honest conversation about why most companies don't have a data problem, but a decision problem. It's not the data, it's not even always about the tools. It's that the insights never quite make it to the actual decisions. We call that the last mile. So today we're done diagnosing the issue. Part two is about the solution. What does decision-ready analytics actually look like? How do standards like international business communication standards drive clarity and not just aesthetics? And how does Zebra BI make it practical? We've got two great speakers to walk us through it. First, Marnix Jansen, a BA consultant, will connect last mile thinking with IBCS principles and show us why this is about driving decisions, not just having a polished report. Then Mark, also a BI consultant, takes over to show how Zebra BI brings it all to life in practice. So you're getting the why and the how in one webinar. Our next and final webinar will follow on April 23rd. That's when we bring the proof, real teams, real stories, what worked and what didn't. So save that date. As always, drop us your questions in the chat as we go. We'll tackle them in the Q&A at the end. All right, Marnix, the stage is yours.
So thanks, Matej, and thank you, Zebra BI, for having me. It's great being here. According to Gartner, 20% of all business intelligence initiatives fail to actually provide value. What we're going to do today is see how we can close that gap and bring it closer to 100. So the agenda for today, well, before you can start solving a problem, you first need to understand it. So that is what we're going to cover first. Then we'll look at a structured solution, being the IBCS and Zebra BI visuals. Then we'll head over to the business case to make this more concrete, and then we'll actually do a live demo. So the last mile problem. So you need to consider your entire data flow as a chain. And you can do 90% of all of the work. Pick up data from your source systems, have your pipelines in place, make sure that your data warehouses store all your data, build your semantic models on top of them, and have reports that have been distributed throughout the organization. If you don't cross the last mile, you will still get 0% of the value. Now, this last mile is all about making decisions and taking actions. So why do we see this last mile fail? There's a couple of reasons for that. First off, lack of standardizations within organizations. And this is very representative for what I've seen at many of my clients. Different data analysts designing and developing reports all will do their best to build a nice report. But if they don't talk to one another and if they don't come up with a common standard, they will all be different. They will look different. They have to be navigated in a different way. Their feel will be different. So there is a lot of switching costs between different reports for people that use different reports. Second, there's no clear starting point. So I'd have to analyze all of the data that is available to me in the report. So regarding the particular reporting domain, I'd have to browse through all the data instead of being made clear what I should focus on. And then there's an insight without a call to act. This is also very common. Typical example here to make this clear. This is a customer overview report. Now, what we can learn from this report is that roughly 1/3 of our clients is in the United States. If this is a report that you share with your users, you'll leave your user wondering, okay, but do I have to do something about this? So your report user won't know. So then the question is your report user going to do something about this? And the answer is no. The report user doesn't know if they need to, so they won't. How are we going to be able to solve this and make sure that we are able to actually cross that last mile? So we're going to leverage the IBCS. So that is an institution as well as a set of recommendations in terms of how to effectively visualize your data. And it it fosters a actionable way of reporting, actionable way of presenting your data, and obviously Zebra BI, which is a IBCS certified software supplier and leverages this philosophy. So if we look at the scientific foundation of what we're doing, at the one hand, we're doing analysis, so we're analyzing data, and at the other, we are visualizing this data. Now, we want to base this up on science as much as possible, and the IBCS is based upon science. So on the one hand, we're looking at data analysis. So what kind of scientific fields, what kind of scientific foundation are we leveraging when we're analyzing data? Well, this is beta. Statistics, mathematics, computer science, these kind of sciences is what we're leveraging when we're analyzing our data. So when we visualize our data, we do not want to take our math books and our statistics books and look at how to visualize data there. We want to take the perspective of the report user. Like a marketeer, when developing a product, you want to take the perspective of your future users. As a data analyst, we want to take the perspective of the people that are using our reports when we design and develop them. So that means that we have to leverage some kind of scientific field that studies individuals when they consume management information. So, and the science that does so is the cognitive psychology. So this is a science that studies mental processes, like how do we learn, how do we perceive information, our memory, those kind of mental processes. And we can learn from that field of cognitive psychology. On the one hand, we can make sure that the cognitive load of our visuals comes down. So make it as easy and intuitive as possible for our report users to take in the message that we want to bring across. And on the other hand, we want to ensure that we promote action. So this is something that we will cover today. So what can we learn from cognitive psychology? Well, on the one hand, pre-attentive attributes is something that we want to base our reports on top of. What this comes down to is that the human mind will process this kind of visualized information before you've actually started paying conscious attention. So within the time it takes to blink your eyes, 0.1 seconds, this kind of information will have been processed by the human brain. So we need to make sure that we leverage this and make sure that we, in our visuals, use these pre-attentive attributes as much as possible. So on the other hand, there are the Gestalt principles, so something that we can also leverage when we try to visualize our data. So there's 7 of them. I'm not going to go by all 7. I just want to make sure that you have a feel for how these work. So we're going to do 2 examples. So on the one hand, there's the Gestalt principle of closure. So this seems like a letter T. Actually, it is not. It's just 3 different objects. Yeah. So the left and the top are actually very similar. What they show is just a few objects on a white canvas. But on the right-hand side, it makes sense to the human mind to close the gaps, to fill those gaps, and then the human mind will. So what can we do with this knowledge when we visualize our data? Well, we don't have to do Christmas trees when we do a chart, right? We can strip this chart of all these objects, because the human mind will just perceive a y-axis here. It will fill that gap. Proximity. Objects close to one another will be perceived as being part of the same group. So we can either leverage that concept on an individual chart or on an entire report page. If you have some comments and you put those next to the charts they are about, and the human mind will just perceive those as being part of the same group. So the second lesson we can take from cognitive psychology is how to make our reports become more actionable. Now, I want to provide for a little bit of context here. So this is a solution of an analytical solution. So this is an analytical platform. I happen to have used Microsoft Fabric here, could have used anything else. I apologize for the slide being this densely populated, but they are all alike a little bit. So we have some data sources, data storage facilities, might have running some other modules on top of that, semantic models, and they all end up at Power BI reports. Now, this is a very expensive solution. We need external consultants to come in. we need licenses, we need the time that our own employees spend on all of this. So this is very expensive, but we don't want for this to be just expenses. We want this to be an investment. So somehow we need ROI. So how are we going to achieve that return on that investment when it comes to an analytical platform like this? Is it insight? That is what people usually think, and that is the most common mistake made, that now we have insight. But insight does not lead to value. Insight does not lead to value. That is a crucial lesson that I want to bring across here. So what do we need? We need action. That is what is required. Only action will return value. Just the fact that an individual has been provided with insight doesn't add any value yet, only if that individual acts after receiving that insight. So we need reports to be actionable, and we can test whether a report is actionable, yes or no. And in order for a report to be actionable, an answer has to be able to provide it to these 4 questions. Yeah, and I would highly recommend you do this for management information you're currently already using. Is this actionable or not? First off, is my performance good or bad? Second, to what extent? Third, why? And fourth, what are we going to do about it? Now, let me do a little example here, because what I did is I did a Google search, and I just searched for Power BI report, and none of the reports that come up, and they're all very representative, actually are able to answer these 4 questions. So this is one that we saw before. So what we actually are missing here is, well, is the performance good or bad? And that is something that we cannot tell from this report. So we know 1/3 of our clients in the US, but we have nothing to compare it to tell us whether that is good or bad, right? So what do we need to do? Well, we have to provide for context. That goes for all the management information, of course, also for the Power BI reports that we distribute. We need to provide for context. So an example that I like to provide, if your doctor tells you, I tested your blood and your XYZ score equals 120. So is that good or bad? We don't know. So what I can do though is make a chart. So I would do a column chart, and then I would do a column for every month, or I might do a bar chart with XYZ scores for every department or every client or every employee, right? And you just show what the XYZ scores. But you don't know, is that good or bad? So do I have to do something about it? So we need the doctor to also tell you, yeah, but we were trying to reach 180. You need your doctor to tell you 120 is not a good score. That is not healthy. And we were trying to get this to 180, and apparently that didn't work yet. Or the average of people your age is 180. That also provides for meaning to that number. Or last year your score was 180, or one of the other 1,000 things that your doctor could tell you to provide for meaning to that number. Yeah. So now we can focus on the variance. Yeah. So if we have context, so now what we can do is we can have a visual on which we focus on the variance. Yeah. So that is what's something that is very often lacking, because this 180 and this 120, actually, especially this 120, when we think about the goal of a Power BI report, which is to promote some kind of action, then this 120 isn't even all that relevant. Yeah, this is not accountability reporting like your annual report. You just want to share with your stockholders what you did with their money. You just need to account for yourself. Or if you have to maybe report to your bank after they provide you with a loan, you just need to report and account for what you did with their money. This is a completely goal from what we're doing here. Yeah, we want to make sure that we promote action. So then this 120 isn't even all this relevant. This 60 is, right? And that is what we should focus on in our visuals. So is my performance good or bad? Well, it's bad, right? So we're using red. So that's universal. Red is bad, green is good. We don't need to explain that to anyone. So to what extent? Well, it's 60 lower, which is 33%. So why? Now, this is something that is crucial. In the report, we also need to allow for answering this particular question. So there should be a follow-up page, a drill-down page, or detail page, or like the example I'm providing here, some kind of hover, right? You hover over one of your data points in one of your charts, and you get this little tooltip, this pop-up saying, well, you started eating more junk food and you're doing less physical exercise. This is why your score is so low and not good. So now what are we going to do about it? Well, tonight I will go to the gym and I'll skip that bag of chips. Right now I'm prompted to act. I'm motivated and I know what to do, and I'm motivated to do so. So this will allow for this 300 seconds experience. This fits in very well with the concept of IBCS and Zebra BI visuals. So 3 seconds, a report user should be able to tell whether the performance is good or bad at a glance. If that is a puzzle, right? If that takes a while for me to figure that out, then that is a poor UX. So in 3 seconds, the report user should be able to answer that question. 30 seconds, where do I need to focus my attention? Which clients, which months, which products, which account managers? Where do I need to focus my attention? Because I don't want to analyze all of the data. After doing so, 300 seconds, I'm going to go into the details. So this is where I'm going to actually look at the individual line items and try to figure out what has this been caused by. And also, what can we do about it? So after 5 minutes, I should be able to figure out, is it good or bad? Where do I focus my attention? What is the cause and what are we going to do about it? Explain variances. Yeah, so this is something that is also crucial. Zebra BI visuals allow for adding comments to your particular visuals the way that I'm showing this here. This is extremely valuable. If an analyst analyzed the results for a particular month or week or quarter and then figured out, like, this is the reason why we were below target, somewhere, somehow, we need to allow for that analyst to actually add that to the report. Right? If not, people are going to have to do screenshots to PowerPoints. And then you will lose the power of an interactive report. So we need to allow for these explanation of variances, and Zebra BI visuals do just that. So what are the key recommendations of the IBCS? There are far more, right? It's a whole philosophy, but let me just go by the main recommendations. If you're reporting on time, always do that on a horizontal axis. So these will be line charts or column charts. Reporting on structure. So these could be cities, clients, employees, departments, will always be done on the vertical axis, and therefore that will be a bar chart. Your fill patterns. So black or solid will always be your current. Planned will be that did not happen yet, right? So that's the rationale. We only do an outline. Forecast, somewhere in between, right? Actual and planned, so we hatch it. And the past will always be a lighter shade of what you select for your current, for your present. Unification of all titles. If you do so throughout your entire report, all of your pages, all of your charts, all of your tables, everything will always have the same way in which you present the titles. That will make it far easier for your report users to consume your report. Highlight variances red and green. Yes. So this, of course, I've mentioned before. What this also implies is that you start to limit usage of other colors, right? So you focus on red and green because that is what the report is about. Is my performance good or bad? So other colors you try to limit as much as possible. Instead, you use grayscale. And this will result into consistency throughout your organization. So it doesn't matter whether it's a finance report or an HR report or some kind of operational report. Any report in your entire organization is going to feel and look the same, and also will become actionable when using these visuals. So now let me go by a business case. So this is just one of the many examples that I can provide for. This is an actual business case, so something that I actually went by, a process that I actually went by with one of my clients. So starting off, there was a supplier quality process. So when goods were received from suppliers, they were tested for their quality. which was done by the quality inspector. So they would run all sorts of tests and add the results of these tests into this organization's ERP system. So the supplier manager would then export that into Excel spreadsheets, analyze the data, and discuss the results with the suppliers. Now, there are many, many supplier managers. And so what is the disadvantage here? Why did this fail? Well, for starters, lack of standardization. So if any supplier would be analyzed by two different supplier managers, it's highly likely it would result into different conclusions. So that was the whole point of doing it. Loads of manual work. So supplier managers would have to export all that data into Excels. But once they did so, they weren't able to start off analyzing it yet. You first need to make sure that you transform it into a way that allows for doing analysis. So there was loads of time spent on exporting and preparing the data, even more than on the actual analysis. And last but certainly not least, there was no starting point. So after exporting all of these data into Excel spreadsheets, nowhere were they told what they needed to focus their attention on. So they would have to focus their attention on everything, which is not a focus at all, of course. So we developed a new supplier quality report. Of course, we educated the supplier managers team about the IBCS and how this could work better. So we developed, we designed the report together with them, and then we developed the report and have that and went through an adoption process as well. But this is what the actual report ended up like. This was the landing page. So on their home page, this is what they were met with. So one overview of 8 KPIs that they were looking for, 8 KPIs that would indicate whether the quality of the goods received was good or bad. And so, of course, here, and this is actually an example that occurred, one of the KPIs is red. So you know this is where I need to focus my attention on. Now, the green ones could be interesting as well, but it's not where you want to start off, right? You want to start off at this purity, because apparently we're not doing so well there. So what is causing it? Yeah. So now we go to this Purity page, and now we want to know what is the problem here. And this stands out. So here we can see that this combination of this particular supplier supplying us with this particular product has this issue. Now what we have here is this ability for analysts to actually add their analysis. So here we can also already find something that has been added by an analyst, and something apparently has to do with the first week of the month. So we want to be able to just hover our mouse over that last bar and be presented with this, so that we actually can clearly see that, yes, indeed, this is the problem. For every week, every month, the first week of the month, there is something off. So we need to go ahead and look into that, yeah? And then, of course, action is required. So the action here, we need to go ahead and coordinate with our suppliers and better distribute our deliveries across the month. Yeah? So this is a concrete action that resulted from this. So what was the result of working through this way? So on the one hand, it was far easier and more efficient to get this insight that the issue was the first week of each month. The root cause, well, what it turned out to be is that the deliveries were based on the previous month's planning. And the action was that we're going to adjust the delivery schedule and ensure it would be aligned with the new month cycle. And so that is what they ended up doing. But the result is that the purity performance came up for this, right? So the issue was detected and solved. So this is a very concrete example of how this approach can make it far more efficient and effective to actually return better results. All right, having said all of this, this is the theoretic part. So now let's go and see a live demo of this way of working with your data.
Thank you, Marnix. Really valuable perspective on how IBCS principles connect to the last mile thinking. Now let's see what this looks like in practice. Mark, over to you. Show us how Zebra BI makes this real.
Okay, yes, so that was really quite in detail, and I couldn't agree more with what Marnix has just shown us. But let's see how you can actually build those reports, how you can integrate those in your existing workflows, and maybe even extend the decision-making process to a supportive data agent, right? So I'll take over the screen now, and let's see how this works in practice. Zebra BI offers three visuals: the Zebra BI tables, Zebra BI charts, and Zebra BI cards, which you can integrate within your visualizations. So all you need to do is basically go to Get More Visuals, go to App Source, and write in Zebra, right? Once you add those three visuals, you can basically leverage those objects the same way as you would with all the other visualization options that are within Power BI. But as Marnik just pointed out, not all visualizations and representation of your data is equal. So let's see how this works in practice. So if we go to a top-level overview of this report, we can see two visuals here on the screen. Yes, it's two visuals because we have a multi-card visual that allows us to look at all our KPIs with the context against previous year and against plan, right? That is important, as we've just seen. Now, below that, we have a structural breakdown for which we use the Zebra BI tables. Basically, we have the dimensions that we want to focus on, in this case, the cost center, and a hierarchy of general ledgers so that we can basically expand and collapse the expenses. And then we have our measures. So basically the actual costs by cost center and account, and then comparisons to previous year and the variances, right? The variances are very important. They are correctly scaled so that the impact can be correctly assessed. Now, the variances are against previous year and against plan. Of course, you can add forecast and so on. But even here, you see that the notation for plan and so on will help you to determine which of the metrics are we looking at. So you can, if you choose a different chart, for instance, a bar chart, or if you want to showcase how the actuals and the previous year stack against each other, right? We can even have an overlapped bar chart. And again, everything is perfectly scaled. So the variances are perfectly scaled against our actuals. So we have the correct impact, and this way we will focus our attention where it is needed. Okay, but let's return back to the original view. Okay, so how do we actually then, first of all, we analyze the report, right? In 3 seconds, it should be pretty much known where we should focus our attention, where the biggest changes are. We can, of course, even sort easily just by clicking on those columns. And the important thing is we can also provide context through commentary, right? So within the visualizations, we can provide context for commentary. And on top of that, as you can see, we can even provide report page tooltips with further breakdowns that allow us to see further details without even leaving the page and explain the reasoning why we achieved the numbers that we have. Now, of course, we'd probably want to focus more on, let's say, the areas that we could improve upon. But again, we can also learn from ones that we're doing well. Now, you can even provide further commentary, right, in details. And here it will be really important to provide exact, concise information and things that are typically not immediately apparent from the overview, right? The visuals should tell you where we should focus our attention, why certain things happened, but we can provide context even beyond that. And this is where the human interaction will, even in the age of AI, be very, very important, because you will be able to provide these informations and suggestions for planning the actions, and it can be integrated into your workflow. So, and this is all dynamic. So if I switch to different time frames, the commentary will stick to those historical values that you provide to. Okay, so let's see how to actually build something like this with Zebra BI visuals. So we'll start with the KPI visuals, so we'll use Zebra BI cards. Now, as soon as we add data, right, this is not yet actionable, right? We have no context, but as we add context from previous year, plan, we get automatic visualization and, of course, notation for the plans and actuals and that context. Now, right now, we don't even know what metric are we reporting at, but because we can include that information, right, we can just add that into our cards visual, right? And here we can have all the different KPIs, but in this case, for this page, we want to focus on the KPIs for the P&L. So what we'll do is we'll add a filter here and just add the P&L KPIs, okay? Now, this multi-card visual allows us to rearrange and then just drag and drop easily where we want to present like the main KPIs. We can even choose a different layout really easily so that we basically resize all the cards side by side. And now we have that context for the KPI. It's as easy as that. You just drop the data, the variances will be automatically displayed, and then we can basically use the top space for these KPIs. Now, one thing that's Zebra BI specific is, first of all, you can correctly scale the elements. So what the second icon in the KPI actually allows us to determine a scale group. And if we mark all the elements, we now have a correct representation of the scale. Right? We can even break the y-axis to see the variances more closely if necessary. But when we have a chart, we want to properly represent those elements. Now, another thing that's specific here and can help us better understand our KPIs is we, of course, have also negative KPIs like costs and OPEX and so on. And in that case, we would go into focus mode and simply just invert those elements, right? Now, with the inverted meaning, of course, a decrease in expenses and costs is a good thing. And we want to represent this in our visual. And again, no additional metrics required. We just simply do it on the visual layer. Now, we could keep the charts in here, but we might as well, for some other dashboards, we might not want to include that, right? That's completely up to you. And depending on the use case, we can even suppress the charts and make the KPIs just markers. It's still here, even within it, we want to, of course, show the impact with the scale icons and so on, okay? Right now, I'll still keep the charts, right? Because on this page, we are not including too much information, right? But I would support any sort of KPIs with also a structural breakdown. And for that, again, we use the Zebra BI tables. And what's really good about it is, again, we follow the same building blocks. We simply add our actual data. We break it down by cost center, right? So cost center and the GL account, okay? And now we can expand or collapse, of course, all the elements. But again, as soon as we add our comparisons, we will get more information how we are doing against our data. So we add the previous year and the plan, and voila, we have it all built for us. And we can now look into the details and so on. Now, the last part is, of course, how to then add the commenting functionality, right? And for this, within the Zebra BI tables, you can bring in your commentary into the comments field if you have it stored in the data model, but you can also comment directly on the tool itself, right? So with the annotation layer. Now, the only thing that we have to do in order for this to work is to provide the outside filter context. So in this case, I'll just drop in some supportive measures. You could even drop dimensions into the filters placeholder. So like selected market or selected period, the month, the year, right? So all of these context is also provided. Of course, we are also dealing with costs here. So an increase is a bad thing. Let's just go into the chart settings and invert the colors on the visual. Okay, so now that the visual is prepared, we can also add our commentary through the annotation layer, right? And this icon here in the top right-hand corner allows us to add annotations and highlight certain aspects, to even provide storytelling elements on top of what the visual even provides us. So we can go here, we can add our commentary on each data point, and it will now stick to that filter context that is described. Okay. So in this quick 3 ways, we provided a nice dashboard that allows us to determine our main KPI and drivers. And then on top of that, what we can do is we can even add a report page tooltip. Now, a report page tooltip, of course, requires us to create a report page. So for instance, if we have a tooltip by country, right, we can have a smaller page, which basically does a breakdown of the costs by country. So how we actually add this to the table as our final piece is we go into the general settings. Under tooltips, we simply select the report page and then choose by country. And now we can provide that context and breakdown of the costs, right, directly on the visual just by hovering on those elements. Okay, now the third visual is very, very useful when we want to understand movement, right, and trends and so on. And this would be typically done by the Zebra BI cards. So let's build a trends page for the costs, for the different cost centers on in here. Okay, so the last one, as I said, Zebra BI charts, we follow the same building blocks as patterns. So we add our actuals, but in this case, instead of using business units or cost centers as breakdowns, we will go into the calendar and choose a month, right? Month name, right? And here we have our actual breakdown. Now, as soon as we add comparison again to previous year, we'll get more information. Okay, we'll get comparisons nicely scaled, and if we have like more, so for instance, we add our plans as well. Now we see that there's a big drop here, right, against our actual numbers, but we also see that there's no comparison. So that might be an indicator that there's some data missing, and it is correct, right? So we actually have only present data up to August, right? So actual data goes up to August. Now, we typically in financial and management reporting, we also include, of course, we have our historical data, we have some targets that we send at beginning of periods and so on, but we can also include our forecast, and this will, with of course, more context into how we're driving our business. So what we can do is we can add that forecast into our forecast placeholder, and Zebra BI will automatically determine, okay, from that point onwards, let's look at the forecast to plan comparison on all charts, right? We have this hatched pattern, so it's easily recognizable. We get the divider line, and on each chart that we use, we can now integrate this into our visualization. Now, we have our nice chart here, but what is the true power of this chart visual is that it allows us to build small multiples and present trends for each of the dimensions that we choose. So for instance, if we want to look at different account groups, we can just drop them here, right? Again, we're looking at costs, so we should probably invert the variance colors. But we can do the same for account groups. We can do the same for cost centers. We just simply choose the dimension used. In this case, right, we want to do cost center analysis. So let's do something like this. And even on the column chart, we want to see what will be the end result. So the grand total can be added as well, right? Okay, and now we see everything, but let's just separate that grand total in the small multiples as well. Now, the small multiples itself means that we have proper scaling between all those charts, right? And we can have some different layouts. Maybe we don't want just like we can place everything in rows, but maybe we want to be more space efficient, and we can even place 3 charts in the same row as the major ones if the space allows. Now we can also add top N plus others functionality, which allows us to basically eliminate all the smaller elements, right, and join them together. So we can even make it more densely packed, or we can simply turn it off, right, if we're interested in seeing all the costs. And lastly, I want to just separate the grid here. So I'll do something like this, dashed separation and outline. Okay, so this allows me now to understand my trends for each of the cost centers for different markets, right, and easily switch between them. Now we could even add another layer of that, right? If we have multiple forecasts, as we have here, right, we can create a forecast switch with simply a measure that allows us to switch between those 3 forecasts to provide a dynamic forecast, and we can drop it into the forecast placeholder and then simply allow us to switch. Or another way would be to simply create a field parameter. So how to actually do this? You go into the modeling tab, and here under new parameter, you simply take the measures, right? So we'll take the 3 measures, the forecast, add even the slicer to the page, and we'll simply say field parameter forecast scenarios. Okay. Now, this created a new field parameter here that we can now use, first of all, as a slicer. So let me just use this here, and I'll rearrange the slicer to match the settings here. So I'll just use like a tile, and we'll turn off the slicer header like this, and just add the title as forecast scenario or selection. Okay. Maybe make the text a little bit smaller like this, and middle alignment. Okay. Now, instead of this first forecast version, I can easily just integrate the 3 forecasts by simply replacing it with the field parameter. And this allows me now to dynamically switch between the forecast version directly within the same visual. Now we could do the same with dimensions, but with this, we give the flexibility that is also required for decision making and so on. Now, on top of that, right, we have this visual layer that allows us to quickly determine how we are performing against our targets, against plans, and for different markets and so on. But with providing the commentary, we can go even further, right? Sometimes the action or the comment or the drivers are not immediately available or are not basically present within the data sets. But if they are, or they're present with external data sets, but they might not be apparent, right? So what we can do to extend this context from different data sets and so on to actually provide further breakdowns or cost structure analysis on different frames, right? So in this case, we have the cost structure by time frames and then quarters and periods and so on for each of the years, right? But we want to provide some context. We want to find the reasons and key drivers behind this analysis. Now, there is an external tool that allows us to do just that. And this is Zebra AI, right? So it's an external tool that we've integrated into our report. And by clicking on this button, it will take us to a page, right, that has the further context integrated into this functionality, right? So what Zebra AI is is an AI agent that can connect to different data models or data sets. You can even provide it, a bit less structured data like Excel sheets and CSVs, but it can connect to different SQL databases. It can connect to your Power BI data. And if you have that context in a data model, you can connect directly to Power BI. Now, all you need is basically a Microsoft account. Once you log in, you can then use it. Now, in this case, what we did is we basically prepared a data story based on that data model. So when we connect the data, we actually have the underlying context already in place. And this agent will now present that data with the same visualizations, best practice visualizations covered by IBCS that will provide the context. Now, this works the same. I'll just reconnect to that data. And this works the same as Power BI. So we have all the functionality to rearrange and talk to your data. But on top of that, the agent itself understands the business meaning behind it. It finds the outliers. It finds interesting areas of our data. It gives us a summary that we can include directly in the comments later on, and also some business advice. Of course, you can validate all the data on each of the visualizations and so on in the background. But the key aspect is that we now have a decision-making ally that you can ask anything. So here you can ask it, what are the key drivers? It even gives us a suggestion for cost performance in Europe market, specifically personnel expenses. Okay, so let's just follow the train of thought of the agent. It will now analyze that data. It will find the key drivers for the personnel expenses going down, and it will try to explain it, first of all, with a chart, but also with the reasoning behind it and maybe some suggestions how we can replicate this. So let's wait for the agent to work. And while it's working, I want to also mention that this is now has recently been announced that the Zebra AI agent is now also part of a Fabric workload. Now, what this means is, and it's global availability, right? So what this means is you can integrate this directly within your Fabric environments. But yes, as we can see, Zebra AI has actually found some interesting things about the personnel expenses. It has pointed them out where there have been changes and so on. And now we can integrate this. We can analyze the key drivers here, but we can also see, okay, where the importance has been. We can integrate the findings directly into our commentary, or we can share this story and the link to it to whoever is concerned and will want to validate that information. Now we can share this dataset connection and integrate it into a comment. So for instance, we want to now comment on these personnel expenses. All we need to do is we basically go in here, add this into the commentary, and say key drivers explained DI, add that link, and that's it, right? So that can be integrated into your decision-making process to provide even the management and executive functions the ability to help support this all decision-making ability that you want. Now, I was mentioning you can now use this Zebra AI agent as a general agent within Fabric. So this means that when you go to the Fabric workloads, you can search for Zebra AI here, and add that as your workload. So you can analyze. So once you add it as a workload, this means that it works as an app, and you can call it on different items in the data sets. So in here, once you add it as a workload, you can just search for Zebra AI, add that workload, right? Name it. So I'll just name it. Okay. And once I have the workload, I can connect it directly through Fabric, and then it can be used as a search set. So in here, I can just connect to one lake. You can connect to all of those elements. But if you just want to try it out, I would go and choose one of the examples. And here I can briefly show you how this works. Right? So it checks the data, what it is about. It checks the data volume and the quality of it. Once everything is okay, it will basically generate the data model for that element, right? Or data model. So here we can see the data model. You can even choose the fiscal year, some instructions for the dashboarding if you want certain kind of visualizations. It even understands the business measure impact. So if we're looking at costs, it will automatically look at it as a negative impact value. And then once you're good to go, you simply hit analyze. And now this will build the dashboards in the IBCS patterns with those best practices in mind that Marnix mentioned before, and build a dashboard for it. This is pretty much a simple data set, but you can build your own data sets and data stories, and then export it to even Excel and PowerPoint if you want to tweak some information for a presentation. But this is now a live data agent or data analyst that can help you understand your business even further and provide the decisions necessary for driving your business forward. Okay, I think this is a pretty good introduction to the tools that are available today. Hopefully, I've illustrated some of the parts that you can do. So, as I said, I suggest you try Zebra in Power BI by going into App Source and typing in Zebra, but also to try Zebra AI. Even on the sample data sets, I can assure you that it gives a lot of quality information, and then you can decide whether or not this is for you. I want to mention that this integrating all of these tools has been done by many successful companies. Some of them you can already see them here. And yes, we hope to see your name also on this list somewhere down the line. With that, I'd like to conclude. We'll just add some resources here. We have other webinars where you can go into more specific topics as well, like performance or design language and so on. We also have a learning platform called Zebra AI Academy. And if you're interested in a more detailed overview of all the tools that Zebra BI allows, you can go to the Zebra BI live demo, and then you can also ask further questions, explore the templates, and so on. With that, I would like to conclude and go to our Q&A session.
Oh, perfect, Mark. Thank you so much for this, and also Marnix. So that was really interesting. Yeah, let's go ahead with the questions. So we had a couple of interesting ones, but let's start simple. So Vladimir here asked a question. Maybe show less of previous year and more of planned next year, next month, or next period. So maybe I'll answer this one because it's a simple one, and you guys know more than I do. And also to have to give a little bit of breather to Mark, he's been talking a lot. So yes, in Zebra BI you can see various placeholders. So it's previous year, it's a plan, and it's a forecast, but it doesn't mean it has to be previous year. It can be any period that you imagine. So it can be day, month, so whatever period from your calendar table, you can put it in that placeholder, just to not be confused about that. Okay. Now we got some comments rather than question. And this one is the biggest challenge in standardization of actionable reports is you still have to recognize who your customers are. You're teaching the customers, but also making sure that they're receiving the correct information that needs to take action. So it's a collaboration. I think Marnix, you can take this one, probably confirm it or deny.
Sure, well, I couldn't agree more. So what this requires is that you are in touch with your future report users from the get-go and make sure that you do this together, indeed collaborating. That said, it is important though from a report producer point of view to educate your users and make sure that you end up with an actionable report.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Maybe let's head over to the comments question. There were quite a few, and let's start with Christine. So she actually asked 3 questions. Is the old comment stored somewhere? Another question would be, I think it was, where was it? Here it is. Sorry. So what happens if I come back in a month and add a new comment to raw material? So this was one of the rows. And the third part of the question, or do I simply overwrite it? So yeah, Mark, are you going to take this one?
Yeah, maybe I can, and just quickly reiterate, right, how the commenting works, right? So when we store the commentary, right, whether it's on the model, we typically want to link, or if it's in annotation, we typically want to link it and add that context, right? So basically, if I add the context of the selected year, or so typically this can be done with the supportive measures, right? So that we have full control, like what's the selected period and so on. It's basically just a selection on the year, right? So if I add that to the filter context, now that when I add the comment stored for the year 2023, right, on any basically data point, this comment will be stored on that data point and with the added outside filter context. So if I move now to 2024 and back, you can see that the comment still remains there, right? But you have, with the annotations, you have to provide that filter context yourself. So, I mean, this gives you also more control, but same goes for the model-based comments, right? You would typically store it with the information on either the time period where the comment is added and the cost center and so on in the written back table. So that's basically how you store the commentary. And yes, it sticks there, right? And yeah, you can later edit it, of course, the comment itself. So if I go back to the annotation mode, I can go here and edit the comment. But outside of that, yeah, it's there within the visual settings.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so the commentary, you mentioned 2 ways of entering commenting, and from the database and from on the visual itself. Do we dare to talk about the third option that is coming soon?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we can just mention it, right? So what we're doing in the future is we want to make this commentary solution even more intuitive, right? And encompass like all sorts of, environments, right? Of course, we want to enable different viewers with different levels of permission, but typically we want to reuse those comments maybe in other reports or other workflows, right? So what we will introduce quite soon is the ability for those annotations to be stored in a table, and the ability will be extended to the viewers, right? So the ones that are consuming the reports. But it does require then to have the correct read or write access, and we'll also take care of that. But yeah, that's as much as I'll basically can say at this point, is the annotation layers will be able to basically write back, and also the ability will be extended to view mode solutions, so in service and all the good stuff.
Okay, perfect. I think that was it. And then you showed the AI part, which got our users excited here in the comments. So let's just switch to AI. And maybe I'll search for some more questions if there are something else, but let's just switch to AI. This was a simple one. Maybe we can answer this one. Missed the beginning, so this might have been stated already, but do you need a Fabric capabilities for Zebra BI to work, or is it pro license?
So within the global availability, or to run Zebra AI as a workload in Fabric, you of course need to be on Fabric, right? So at least it has to be, I believe, a premium workspace or premium capacity workspace that allows you to run those objects directly from it. But you can draw data from any workspace, right? But just for the workload where it resides, I believe it has to be premium. But don't take my word for it. I'll link the documentation for Zebra AI for everyone interested, also in the follow-up. So yeah, you can read all about it. Now, we did discuss this, decision-making layer and how AI can enable it. And I think there was also a question like how this differentiates between Copilot, right, and other AI agents. So the big thing, I think, from the first part that Marnix pointed out is you want to have that, decision layer, but it has to be standardized. It has to have this best practice visualization options and IBCS concepts that help you understand the visualization. Now, all this is built within the Zebra AI and BI tools. So it basically is focused on this kind of visualization, so the IBCS patterns to present the data, right? And once these patterns are learned, and this was also one of the topics, the one that talked about, like, okay, how to learn any new tool and so on. I think once you kind of understand these concepts, it's so much more efficient to consume the information, and it's really clarity that we're looking at, right? So if you have this in the same visualizations, right, the same chart options with included variances, correct exposure of impact of each of the metrics, when you're looking your data in Excel, when you're looking at it PowerPoint, Power BI, and extending it to the AI agents, we want to have this same look and feel, right? It's much easier than to operate, to even collaborate and talk with different departments and so on. So this, I think, is a crucial point also that helps us in this decision-making layer. Yeah, I think we have some more questions to answer. Then we'll probably have to wrap it up, right?
Yeah, we have quite a few. So even if the questions are not answered this time, or we don't have time, we'll follow up with you offline. So I think we can take a couple of more questions. I think we still have time. Just give me a moment. Okay, this is another AI question. So is the agent able to explain the why? And I think that right now it's only the summarization, the data and highlights, right? But not root cause per se. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Well, it's partially true, right? So it depends on what kind of data you feed it, right? And because you can, summarize the data, and the AI agents will find those outliers, right, and connections much easier. They will also point you in the right direction, right? So and the added value is you can ask it to go beyond just what's in the data, right? It has the added logic so that you can basically talk to it, explain the drivers, and find that information that's linked. But yes, of course, if you put really good data in, it's similar as anywhere else, like quality in, quality out. If you put garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, that is true for AI, for Power BI, and basically everything, right? I think we can all agree here. Okay, an elephant in the room. This one is always a popular question, but we can be putting our corporate data in this one. How safe is this? Referring to Zebra AI. Now, I believe we have some options, not only the one that you saw going to websites, but I think Mark can take it over.
Yeah, I'll just quickly share the screen
Sure.
again. So let me just show this one.
Yeah. Sorry, Marnix, no questions for you.
No problem.
At the moment. So yeah, I mean, what Marnix explained in the beginning is basically something that's like we do work with every day, right? So I think it's straight on point, and that's just the reality of it, right? But back to the security question, right? So you can go to zebra-ai.com, and there you can go to the FAQ section, right? We won't go into details, but here you'll also find everything on the security and privacy. We do offer private Azure hosting for the data, and of course this is important, right? With any source of corporate or sensitive data, we want to make sure that that data can be trusted, that it's not getting stored somewhere, and so on. So just maybe a quick explanation, right? So the data, I think, resides within the agents only for the time of the session. Then, right, it is not saved anywhere, and that is also the reason why when you reconnect to a story, you have to reapply the credentials so that it can reload the data and reconnect the data and so on. But yeah, I suggest just going through our FAQ section and reading on also like the security policies and everything, just to make sure before you try it out. But in itself, I think you can watch the demo for Zebra AI, but we have also some sample data just so you can understand how the entire thing works. And if you're interested, we can also have a private demo session for that. But yeah, that would be on the security questions for Zebra AI.
Okay, perfect. We'll take one more AI question. The comment section is actually smart. However, would there be an agentic AI? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, I think we have this on our roadmap somehow, but it's not close yet. Some technical limitations, but yeah, keep subscribe to our newsletter and follow us. There's always something new coming each month. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the next step, of course, would be to integrate the agent itself right into the commentary section, do the aggregations, and top level roll up the commentary and stuff like that. But yeah, we're getting there for sure.
Yep. Okay, so I think we are done with the question, or maybe we can take one more. This is a difficult one. We received the video recording PDF after the session. I'll take that one because I take the easy questions. I leave everything else to Marnix and Mark. So yes, of course, you will all receive the video and presentations and everything probably tomorrow. And I guess that's it. So we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody joining. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Thank you, Marnix. And
yep.
enjoy your day.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And yeah,
Thanks.
Again, thank you, Marnix, for joining the session.
Sure.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
everyone.